sorry, I just got a recording notification. So that's good, Mike. It's being recorded. Yeah, so as I mentioned, we'll be getting started very soon with our speaker. So just going through a bit of housekeeping and welcoming you to the event. We are also looking for volunteers. So these are our wonderful volunteers. We've got Sam, Tariq, and John and Tim, who do a fantastic job of helping us with our in-person events. But we are actually looking for new organisers new volunteers to help us on the day of the event. But we're actually also looking for new organisers to help keep the event running. So if that is something you might be interested in getting involved with, whether that's on a voluntary level on the day to offer help on this, particularly with this hybrid events, do get in touch. But particularly if you are interested in helping organise the Green Tech Southwest events, please do let us know, as we'd love to be able to continue with these, and we'll be needing more organisers going forward. So we also have our resources and every event that we ever do, as you might have just heard from the alert that Mike or that Zoom coughed out. We record all of our events, including the hybrid ones, and make sure that all of our events are accessible on our website. So make sure you do check it out. We've got such a great catalogue of past events and speakers. All of the resources shared. You can watch all the talks as well. So definitely make sure to take a look at this when you have some time. We have an opportunity for 60-second intros as well. This is if someone would like to do a bit of a community shout out, or if you have something you'd like a call to action, or if you need any help with anything, this is an opportunity for you to basically come on screen and shout out to the rest of the group anything that you would like that you'd like to share with us. So I'm going to leave a quick pause just to see, and I'm going to flick back to my screen to see if we have any volunteers.
Just frantically letting a lot of people in. We've got about 30, but I think if you want to give it a few seconds, we'll
not
get a few in. I know that Dryden was keen to do one if he's in the room.
Oh, perfect. Great. Yeah, Dryden is one of our speakers for our next event, part of Bristol Tech Festival in October. So yeah, definitely be keen to hear from him.
Okay, I'll start. I mean, I don't know.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Joycelyn. I'm calling from Singapore, so I'm really glad and grateful for this event, because a lot of the European events happen in a time where it's not very godly for me. Being in Asia, so I'm really glad I can join this one. Thank you for organizing a green tech projects I'm working on. So I currently can't work on the green tech project yet, but we're working on something related to sustainability, essentially I work in the government, helping all government agencies note their Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions data, right, so that we can work towards reducing it, because as a country we have net zero goals, right? But as that while developing that tool itself, what I hope is that we can take a green tech approach to it. But it will be like a mini case study, and Singapore is really very backward in our software part of things in terms of greening it. So hopefully, really hoping to learn from the community.
Thank you so much for that, Jocelyn. I really appreciate you sharing with us. I don't know if there's a chat option, or what I might do is we'll share our email address. If you want to pop over your contact details, I'll do a little write-up and include your project on our website. So if anyone does want to reach out, they can do so. So I'll make sure I'll get that off of you before we leave. I'll make sure that our email address is available so that you can email your contact details in to be included. So yeah, thank you so much for that. And yeah, great to have international people joining us. It really is always highlights the benefit of doing these online talks as well. Do we have, I don't know, Mike is sort of frantically letting people into the meeting. Do we have anyone else who would be interested in doing a 60-second intro? It can be, as Jocelyn shared, just a project you're working on, or like I said, a call to action, or if there's anything, yeah, do you think the community might benefit from knowing, this is a great opportunity to, yeah, to give a little shout out. But again, no pressure, obviously. This is yeah, we're mainly here for the talk, but it's always good to have a chance to share projects if you are working on any. Mike, I'm not sure if you've got any better visuals on this, but it doesn't look like we've got anyone.
Not at the moment.
Volunteering, no.
Ellen, if you want to jump to the slides at the end, and then we'll get started with Julien very quickly after that, just letting a few more people in.
Yeah, should we get the event started and then I can do a roundup at the end? Or
yeah, whatever's easiest. Yeah, perfect.
All right, brilliant. I'll stop sharing a screen. Mike, do you want to do the intro, and I'll
yeah, sure. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, as Ellen mentioned, we're on our first Zoom. We were on Crowdcast for 5 years, so just bear with us a little bit. But we're really grateful for Julien for coming and telling us all about GreenOps and some of the projects he's working on as well. So yeah, Julien's been known to Green Tech Southwest for a while, and yeah, from chatting to him for the last few weeks, I think you're going to really get some really good things to take away here. So cool. We'll be getting started. Julien, can you hear me? I'll unmute you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Great stuff. Yeah, can everyone hear
cool.
Julien?
Fab. Let me share my screen. For some reason, I can only hear Ellen and no one else. But as long as you can hear me, that is fine.
We're all good to go. Yeah,
right.
I'll come back for questions at the end. If anyone has any questions, fire them over.
Screen? Yeah, awesome. Good. I'll start. So yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Nice to be here. Thanks for taking the time to come to this presentation. So yeah, I'll be talking about GreenOps and how to measure emissions from cloud usage. I'll tell you about tools, data culture for sustainable cloud. It won't be too technical or too theoretical, but because it's based on my own set of experiences, hopefully it will be practical enough to be of use to you. I have loads of slides, but don't worry, I'll share them after the event. So even if I go a bit quickly over something, there'll be opportunities to catch up. So who am I? So I'm Julien Nioche. I live in Bristol. I was until fairly recently a lead developer doing GreenOps and FinOps for the Ministry of Justice. And I've gone back to working for Digital Pebble, which is my consultancy, which I've had for many years. And I do GreenOps and FinOps and green software in general. Most of my career has been about doing open source software. I am essentially a developer. And so I'm a member of the Apache Software Foundation. I've worked on quite a few projects at Apache. I also created one project which is now there. But a couple of other organizations I'm a member of are Boa Vista, which is mostly French-speaking community of people sharing tools, data, and methodologies for green software. And I also lurk around various projects at the Green Software Foundation. So starting with just a few general considerations. So looking at the environmental impact of ICT as a whole, it was estimated a few years ago, well, in 2022, that 3 to 4% of global greenhouse gases emissions were due to ICT, expected to double by 2026. And that's fueled, as you guessed, by generative AI and cryptocurrencies to some extent. But it's not just about greenhouse gases. It's about an increased energy use, which means that we need to find ways of matching or generating the electricity for this increased usage. Water consumption, which is in the news at the moment, pretty much every day you find an article about how it's impacting water around the world. E-waste, and we data centers in particular use loads of hardware and everything. What happens to that when it comes to the end of its life? and resource depletion. To make the hardware in the first place, you need minerals, you need all sorts of things. That is a projection by the EIA, so the International Energy Agency, about projected electricity consumption of data centers based on various scenarios to do with AI and its adoption. So depending on AI evolution, you can see a growth up to depending on whether it's strong liftoff or restricted somehow. But even if you sticking to the base scenario, it should reach 975 terawatt hours, which is like 3% of global demand. Closer to us here in the UK, NESO, so the National Energy System Operator, estimates that the projected growth of data centers in Britain could add up to 71 terawatt hours of electricity demand in the next 25 years. So it's energy, that additional energy that we need to produce. So again, from the perspective of someone who's we all green techies here. So from someone who works in tech and could be, as a hypothetical scenario, working in an organization with a big sort of use of the cloud, what can you do to make a difference at work? You probably make a difference at home by doing all the right things, but how can you have an impact through in your professional life? So just looking at the various sort of sources of footprint from a typical, say, a software company, an organization having loads of stuff running on the cloud. So obviously your product and service and where that runs. So on the clouds, that could be on AWS, Azure, Google. There could also be an impact, obviously, on the client side. So if you have a website or an app, that will have an environmental impact on your with the people who use your services. Then to produce the software and manage it and monitor it, you need all sorts of services like your GitHub, your Datadog, etc. Copilot, if you have developers using AI and so on. So that's usually SaaS, so software as a service. You also have your communications, like right now we're on Zoom, but within for a team to work on the software, you have Slack, Google Meet, etc. The network that underpins it all. And of course, let's not forget the physical devices, the laptops, the screens, everything. So some of it is pretty hard to estimate because SaaS is very opaque. If you talk to GitHub, for instance, they'll tell you how much it costs for you to use their services every month. They're not going to tell you, how much energy was required to run your stuff or the emissions that resulted in that energy consumption. But fortunately, some other things are, I'll say, easier to estimate, and that's the cloud footprint and the activity that enables to measure that. It's called GreenOps. So you're probably familiar with the term FinOps already. So FinOps is about measuring and reducing the financial cost of cloud operations. GreenOps look at it from the perspective of the environmental impact. It's about first to estimate, calculate the impacts. And then hopefully reduce them by being able to take some actions. They are the same, in my view, the same side, two sides of the same coin, and they complement each other, as we will see shortly. So I ran a survey with an organization based in Switzerland called Open Source Economy, and I did that earlier this summer. And so we sort of asked a number of people who use the public cloud and were familiar with GreenOps about what they thought the main hurdles were for the adoption of GreenOps in their organization. I'm sorry, you can hear the rain here in Bristol. It's pretty loud, so I'm competing with it. So the first out of the 83 responses, and more than half the respondents said that the main hurdle was the lack of awareness or interest for environmental issues in their organization. Second came no senior management buy-in. A quarter roughly of respondents mentioned lack of maintained open source alternatives. And only 15% said, no, we are fine. So looking at the first, one of the top two hurdles, so the lack of senior management buy-in, what can you do in your organization to get someone, ideally someone from the C-suite or one of the leaders, to get them on board with what you want to do with GreenOps. The aim is to get a champion in top management for your cause. Without one, it will be pretty difficult to be successful. So the first argument you can use is to turn the light on. Sorry. First argument you can use is to explain that it can improve the reputation of your organization if you're transparent about your environmental impact. It can also be a good way of retaining employees. So if you're saying your team of developers, you have people who care strongly about environmental issues, well, that will be they will be willing to stay within the organization if something's done about it. In some cases, it's about complying with existing commitments. So, for instance, in government, there are objectives to, say, reach net zero by 2035. So again, by putting that forward as an argument, you can try and get people on board. The main argument, though, sadly, well, not sadly, but that's the way the world works, is that what might get them interested is if you talk about money. And if you explain that GreenOps is likely to boost FinOps, typically it's a bit of a stereotype, but it is true. It's something I observed when I was at the Ministry of Justice, is that if you talk only about costs, people, the developers, the product teams and everything will of course be interested and willing to take the actions to reduce those costs. But what is more effective is if you talk to them about the cost and the environmental impact. So if you talk to your management and you try and get them to support you in your GreenOps efforts, then that's a really good point to put forward. So by you will optimizing the use for green reasons and also make a difference on the financial front. So it's not all about tools and techniques and everything. It's also about culture. You need to start a cultural revolution, and it actually is probably the hardest thing to do. So you can, again, that's where FinOps and GreenOps complement each other. You can harness the FinOps principles. So if you look at the FinOps Foundation, they have a list of tools, methods, and principles that they propose. Some of them are shown here, and most of them will also totally apply to GreenOps. So teams need to collaborate. Everyone takes ownership. A centralized team drives it, etc. This is also this is for FinOps. It also works for GreenOps. And actually, it's the same cultural shift. What you want to get to is to have accountability for both the costs and impacts across your organization. It's not about having a team of who will be the cost or the green police and telling people off. It's about the aim of that team is to facilitate other teams taking ownership. So if you have a FinOps team in your organization, work with them. They are your first port of call. If there is no FinOps team, then maybe try and become that team or make sure that it does exist. FinOps and GreenOps also have other things in common. They have the actions that you take to reduce the cost or the impacts are often the same. It's things like turning off unused resources, auto scaling. So if you have a system that has peaks in demand, then don't over provision just for your peaks. Make sure that your system is elastic and can scale automatically. Right sizing, similar. Don't over provision. Make sure that you get the right type of instances, for instance, for computation. Choice of storage and compression. Another thing that FinOps and GreenOps have in common, and it's the most boring thing, but it's absolutely essential. It's the tagging. So tagging is the fact that you can associate like key values, arbitrary key values on resources that you use on the cloud. So for instance, on AWS, you can have computing instances, so EC2 instances, and you can add tags to them. And that's something you use, for instance, to track things like, this resource is used by team X for this product within this service area, And then, yeah, this one's for our test environment, that one is for our production environment, and so on. So tagging, yeah, not the most glamorous subject, but you can't do without, and that's because that's what allows you to attribute the cost and impact to parts of your organization. So yeah, you need a policy for it, and you need to as early as possible determine what tags are a good reflection of your organization, and then make sure that they're enforced when people sort of get resources on the cloud. So FinOps and GreenOps also, yeah, use the same approach, same strategy, which is to put data everywhere. Make it hard for people to ignore the cost and impacts. Probably don't create yet another dashboard that people will ignore, but often especially in large organizations, people will already have loads of different dashboards and reports and everything. Well, make sure that the data can be embedded in those reports. Don't change their habits of using the same tools, just make the information visible to them. Work with your SRE team, so site reliability engineering and all platform teams. They're used to providing loads of information to the product teams. You can try and gamify things, have leaderboards of emissions per dollar spent or pound spent, across the different teams or products. And then make things automatic, like flag unused resources. If a developer tries to spin something on the cloud, spin a new resource, then make it obvious that there are things that you should probably turn off before, or things that you could possibly upgrade in terms of types of resources. So as far as FinOps is concerned, there's loads of data available. We have, for instance, with AWS, we have something called CURS, cost and usage reports. And they are just absolutely enormous. You can think of them as massive CSV files with loads of columns. And these reports contain one line per resource, say, within an hour that you've used in AWS. It could be storage, computation, a type of service, etc. So you have those very sort of exhaustive list of all the things that you've used. That's for FinOps. There are loads of tools that can use them. What about GreenOps? So let's start from the obvious place. Let's have a look at what the cloud providers give us, to understand the environmental impact of our cloud activities. So we'll start with we'll just look only at AWS, also because they are the main cloud provider. So they have something called the customer carbon footprint tool, which looks like this. You get a graph over time of your estimated emissions. There's a 3 months delay between the moment where before you can see the data, so it's not exactly real time. And then all you get is a breakdown per service, and you have like literally 4 categories: EC2, so computation; S3, storage; CloudFront, and other. And other could be everything else. And then the breakdown per region, which again is pretty broad. So if you look at the other cloud providers, they vary a lot. AWS are pretty poor, to be honest. They are improving a few things to it. For instance, they're going to introduce Scope 3 before the end of the year. So in the greenhouse gas protocol, we have the emissions are split into 3 scopes. So Scope 1 is basically on-site emissions. So if you have for a data center, it will be their generators, their backup diesel generators. Every so often, they need to fire them to make sure they're still working. These are our emissions. Scope 2 is the energy they import from the grid. And Scope 3 is everything else. It's the hardware, it's the building, everything. So AWS, don't include any Scope 3. They've only recently introduced Scope 2. Location-based Scope 2. So a slightly more accurate way of computing emissions for the energy they import. Google are far better in loads of different ways, and Azure are kind of in between. Loads of limitations, no real time, lack of granularity, so you can't link your emissions to a specific team, product, or service. You can't see the details of the more details about the cloud services responsible for the emissions. Very partial coverage. different methodologies. You're comparing, if you have stuff running on things on multiple clouds, then you're comparing apples and oranges. And yeah, it's not actionable. Yeah, you can't use that information to drive change and lower the your emissions. So we need other sources. So as I said earlier, the great love of my professional life is open source software. So let's start by looking at what stuff we can find in the open source world that might be useful to us. So the main one is Cloud Carbon Footprint. So it's a well-established project, been going for many years, backed by a company called ThoughtWorks, which handles multiple cloud providers, so the three main one plus Alibaba. It does provide estimates of the energy used, the emissions and costs. It does embodied emissions and usage emissions. So embodied emissions are the emissions related to the making of the hardware, typically all the scope 3 stuff, and usage are the emissions related to the energy required to run the stuff. And what you can do with Cloud Carbon Footprint is drill down by cloud provider, account, service, and time period. So it's not by user tag. So it can't give you a very, very detailed view of the emissions. But it does recommendations, and that's pretty good. So by recommendations, I mean it will spot some of your usage and suggest things like, oh, you could turn this resource off, or you could upgrade the type of resource that you're using to, say, a more recent one. That's what the dashboard looks like. It does the usual comparisons in terms of flights and so on. You'll get another one later. Breakdown per region, etc. So it was for a very long time, the only reference tool, the only tool available to do that, to do GreenOps. It is extensible and customizable, but on the other hand, pretty hard to set up. The data and methodology are a bit dated now. And the reason is that it's not actively developed because the company behind it have pulled the plug on it. So it's pretty much, sadly, a dead project. So let's look at another one. I mentioned Boa Vista at the very beginning. So Boa Vista, as I said, I'm a member of Boa Vista, so I'll say we have a number of tools and data and things that are available open source. One of them is Cloud Scanner. So Cloud Scanner allows you to see the real-time impact of EC2 instances on AWS. So it's multi-criteria. So it does energy consumption, global warming potential, so CO2 emissions, and abiotic resource depletion, which is a fancy expression for mineral resources. And it does, again, usage and embodied emissions. It gets the data from another Boa Vista project, the Boa Vista API, and that is actually what provides all the estimates of emissions and energy for the different resources. So what Cloud Scanner does actually is just map that. Well, Cloud Scanner gets the EC2 usage and maps it with the data from the API. The good thing is you can filter by user tags. And it looks a bit like this. That's the dashboard's customizable, and that's what you can use it for. It's actively developed, quite easy to set up, but it does only EC2. It's totally decoupled from FinOps, so it doesn't quite help with our strategy of having GreenOps done side by side with FinOps in the organization. And it's really more about monitoring than reporting. So Spruce. So Spruce is my latest baby, so to speak. An open source project under Apache license, which I started a few weeks ago, really. Uses a project called Apache Spark, and that's used to enrich, to build an enrichment pipeline to enrich Kerr reports and add additional columns. I'll show you an example in a minute. And what Spruce does is that it uses third-party data and libraries to do the estimates of energy and emissions. So it does use, for instance, the Boa Vista API. It reproduces some of the heuristics from Cloud Carbon Footprint. It uses data from electricity maps, and so on. So it's the same data as FinOps, literally, but with additional columns. In the end, so you get like a massive, an even larger file, which is a bit like a CSV file, which you can query with Athena. So that's a service within AWS, or locally with DuckDB. And so you run a good old SQL query like this, and you're able to get break things down to your heart's content. And you can also use obviously user tags if they are present. So yeah, actively developed, although not for a very long time. But I've just had recently a first contribution from someone else, which is really encouraging. I think it's quite easy to set up. The limitations are that only AWS for now. We don't yet have a dashboard that plugs into it, but there will be one at some point. And it's just a very early project, so not all services. AWS services are covered yet. So that was for the open source tools. What do we find in the commercial world? So there are quite a few commercial solutions that will give you the data you need to do GreenOps. So we have here 4 I've worked with, 2 in France, 2 in the UK. So let's start with the UK ones. So we have Tailpipe, we have Gareth on the call. Tailpipe are our fellow Southwest sort of friends from Bristol and Bath. We also have Green Pixie, who are based in London, I think, and Soft and Oxygen IT are in France. They're all a bit different. There are subtle differences. I'm not going into the tiny details, but basically their mode of operation varies a little bit. So some of them will just take enrich usage reports, a bit like what Spruce does. Others are just pure APIs, and those APIs know nothing about your particular usage or consumption or anything. It's just APIs you query to get estimates of energy for a particular type of resource. So two different approaches. And some of these providers are kind of in between, do a bit of enrichment, but then also provide stuff through APIs. Some are cloud only; they only look at the GreenOps for the cloud. Others cover a wider perimeter and do some software as a service, some in your devices, etc., etc. Some do recommendations, some don't. Some are integrated with other FinOps tools. There's varying degree of service coverage. What I mean by that is of AWS services. There are so many, or other cloud provider services. There are so many of them that they all not all cover the same things. And as you would expect, although they all follow pretty much all similar approaches, there are slight differences in the underlying methodologies. Different pricing structure as well. So some are percentage of your cloud bill, some size of your care reports, some are the number of accounts you have on the cloud. Others are just per API call. So they're all certainly different. If you want to investigate them and you think you might need one of those, feel free to get in touch with me, and I'm happy to have a chat and help you and direct you to the one that might be the most appropriate for your needs. So just to make it and just to conclude, just a even more practical. So let's look at a practical use case we did very recently with another organization based in the Southwest, in Bristol. So Camera Forensics. I know them pretty well. I used to work there. They are absolutely amazing. They are world leaders in their field. So what their platform is used for is to help investigators of internet crimes against children, modern slavery, and human trafficking. You can't do more tech for good than these guys. As you would expect, it's about images. So there's they do quite a lot of heavy processing in the cloud with analyzing images, searching on the content of images and metadata and stuff, and also they do quite a bit of AI. So they do super important stuff, very useful. but they also genuinely care about the environmental impact of their work, which is why they asked us to help them with their GreenOps. So we teamed up with Tailpipe. Gareth, you can wave again if you want. We use Tailpipe's system to enrich the reports from camera forensics. And what you get is like an enriched Kerr report with additional columns. So similar to Spruce in a way. So embodied emissions, energy used, and emissions usage. So Tailpipe process like months of those reports, and then we got them, did some basic FinOps checks, a bit like your MOT for your car. So checking that not necessarily on the GreenOps side of things, but more on the cost side of things, that camera forensics had a good coverage of the measures they could take to reduce their cost, and also check how they were doing with best practices like user tags, wasted resources. Turns out that because they are pretty awesome, they had all these totally in control, and we're doing fine on that front. As far as the GreenOps side of things is concerned, so we took the data from Tailpipe and generated a report for camera forensics, where we, with a breakdown of energy use and emissions per over time, per month, per AWS product and operation, instance types, and so on. And we got to the bottom line, which is that on average, their monthly emissions were estimated to be 1.3 tons of CO2 equivalent, which is like driving 3.3 thousand miles in a car, the usual comparisons. But we then also made a number of recommendations. So with green software and GreenOps, there are loads of different measures that could be used. Most of them are well documented, but these are the ones that were relevant specifically for camera forensics. And the number one thing that they can do it's called location shifting. So part of being carbon aware is obviously taking into account the carbon intensity of where the computation is happening. So carbon intensity, obviously, based on the electricity mix of a particular grid, it will result in more or less of CO2 emissions. So if you have energy produced with coal and gas, it's going to be very CO2 intense. Whereas if you're renewables, like it's the case in Sweden, you are far more carbon intensive. So the recommendation was to shift as many as their computation and their resources from the US to another location like Sweden. So why was it in the US in the first place? I think it's simply that when you use AWS, it's always UST Swan. So it is the default sort of zone that Amazon will launch things for you. So which is why they had a lot of their stuff there. Historically as well, I think some of the services were not available in other locations and only in the US. It's not the case anymore. Anyway, recommendation number one, move to Sweden, and it should result in nearly 1/20th of the emission for the same sort of resource use. The second recommendation was to review and upgrade the instance types that they use. So they had some processes have been running for quite a long time, and the type of CPUs, to keep it simple, that were used were not the most recent. So they are now more energy efficient sort of resources based on type of CPUs called Graviton. For the same performance, you require less energy, and therefore the emissions will be lower. Sometimes it's even cheaper to use the new versions compared to the old ones. So again, recommendations to them was to review what they currently use and upgrade where possible. The third recommendation was a bit of a different nature. And it applies to everything with GreenOps, is that once you're able to quantify things, to measure your impact, to share them, and visualize them, then you can put it in perspective. So I mentioned the 1.3 tons of CO2 equivalent on average that they use every month. That's only the equivalent of 1.4 flights from London to New York. which shows how bad flying is. So but again, the recommendation is once you can you can realize that actually the cloud emissions are probably not your greatest where you can have the greatest impact, and probably cut on the other things first. The same goes for your equipment. For instance, so that's from a very good report from the digital economy report from last year by the UN Trade and Development Agency. I really recommend it. And it shows, for instance, that for devices like laptops or tablet or smartphones, most of the impact of the device is just to make it. It's not so much to charge it and use it. So again, if you want to make a difference with your hardware, just keep it running for as long as possible. So we shall see where we get to with them. We'll probably look at their again rerun the same thing in a few months' time. Once they've made some of the changes with location shifting and everything, and hopefully we should see some improvements on that front. But it's a super cool use case. A few resources for you to continue with GreenOps and green software in general. Again, you'll find that in the slides. And just to wrap up, again, if you want to have an environmental impact at work and with your cloud usage, just write FinOps and put GreenOps next to it. There are tools and data available. We've looked at a number of open source ones. We've looked at some of the commercial providers. And as we've seen with a practical use case with camera forensics, you don't have to be in a huge organization to make a difference. Of course, you're not going to solve all the world's problems with data centers and everything, but there's probably quite a bit you can already do regardless of your organization. If you want to try GreenOps and green software and you need help, well, feel free to get in touch. Be very happy to help. And also with my open source hat on, if you're a dev and or not if you're a dev, give Spruce a try. See if you find it useful and if you can contribute to it. Just before I forget, it's Green Aero London in a few weeks' time. I won't be there. I had a look at the program. It looks absolutely terrific. From my experience of going last year, a really good place to have informal discussions with people, do networking, and just learn tons of stuff with people who care about their digital footprint. That's me. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Julien. Can you hear me? Can't hear me. Okay, over to you, Ellen.
That's all right.
Sadly, I still can't hear anything at all.
Can you hear me at all? Oh no. Mike, I'm not sure if there's any settings we can change with.
Julien, can you hear Ellen at all?
It doesn't seem like.
Okay.
I might write in the message once.
Well, thank you very much, Julien. I know you can't hear us, but hopefully you can watch this back. But a round of applause and thank you very much in the comments would be great. I was going to put some questions to Julien, but if you can't hear me, it's going to be a bit tricky. So I'll gather any questions. If you want to throw them into the chat, he's going to try and come back. If we can get that working, we'll ask him some questions when he comes back. If not, I'll put those to him over email and make sure to get back to you all. So if you have any questions on GreenOps at all or Spruce, throw it in the questions now, and we'll grab that and put them to Julien shortly or later. But in the meanwhile, just thank you very much for coming. I think we're going to hand back to Ellen just to talk about some events that are coming up for us and also some other events that you should check out within a similar kind of setting. So over to you, Ellen.
Thanks, Mike. So upcoming events of interest. Julien got in there a little bit, got in there first, but just to sort of mirror what he was saying, the lineup looks incredible this year for Green I/O London on the 23rd and 24th of September. Definitely worthwhile to check that out. And then we've got a climate and disability programme showcase on the 2nd of October. So it's a hybrid event celebrating the exciting climate and disability projects connected to the Community and Climate Action Project and their partners. I think they then, after the event, they also then move on to Green Mingle for a bit of social as well. So definitely worth checking that one out if you are around. There's also Climate Action Tech, not necessarily a specific event, but just a worthwhile group to keep an eye on. They post lots of online and in-person events, so it's all centered around climate and tech. So yeah, definitely worth checking those out if you're not familiar. So our next speaker-led event, so it's part of Bristol Tech Festival on the 8th of October. Really looking forward to having Dryden William and Ed Walsh join us. So it is going to be hosted, to RSVP, you'll need to sign up via their own platform. So it won't be hosted on Meetup. So we'll get the sign up link out to you this week. Make sure you get in there quick because it did sell out last year and it only has capacity of 50. So yeah, we'll keep you posted on that one and get the link out to you ASAP. But yeah, keep your eyes peeled for that next week. Really looking forward to that one as well. And then, yes, your feedback means a lot to us as always. Don't be shy. Feel free to contact us on greentechsouthwest@gmail.com, or you can reach us on LinkedIn as well. Great to hear from you anytime with any feedback or pointers. I'm going to hand back to Mike to see if we had any luck with Julien.
Yeah, can Julien hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm back. Sorry about that.
Right. No, thank you for doing that. Yeah, we have had a couple of questions in the comments, so we'll quickly whiz through these. If people do need to leave, I totally understand, but these are some good ones, so you might want to hang around. So from Vikram, have you also had experience of organisations including GreenOps in scope from their service providers?
Yeah, so I'm assuming we're talking SaaS here, and I think there's another question related by Francois about how to integrate carbon impact from third-party tools like Datadog or other. Well, yeah, thank you. Two very good questions. Yeah, it is really hard to get the data from them. I would say as a client, and whoever that is, as a client, you can pester them to try and be more upfront about their usage and emissions. All you can do is try and estimate things, but yeah, it is pretty hard. Yeah, really difficult. The same applies to, of course, AI. How do you so we've seen recently over the summer, just like 3 months, some sort of evolution around AI companies sort of sharing data about how much it costs in terms of energy to do like one query or something. So it's going in the right direction, but it's still very, very opaque. I suppose for AI, the best thing you could probably do is if you need to use AI for your organization, you can always use open source models and run them on the cloud on your instances. At least you'll be able to measure it using the tools that I mentioned earlier. But yeah, software service is very difficult. We mentioned Dryden and his. I'll definitely have a look at his next time he does a presentation. I think he'll be at GreenIO as well. So for Spruce, we're about to start using his project, Carbon Runner, which I think is a really good one. Carbon Runner is about, I don't know if Dryden's here or not. Could probably do the commercial of this stuff better than I would. But it's basically about being able to measure. So, on GitHub, you can have actions, you can have your workflows of compiling code and doing tests, etc., which obviously requires resources. It needs to run somewhere. GitHub, and I know because I used to talk to them quite a lot when I was working for the MOJ, trying to get them to tell us more and everything, but they simply won't. So what Carbon Runner does instead is that instead of running on GitHub servers, all your code and your actions will run on a server managed by Carbon Runner, but that will be running in an area with a lower carbon intensity. So you'll be able to lower your impact and also measure it, which is pretty cool. So yeah, that's a good example of SaaS where, if you can't find a solution from the provider, there's probably a way around it, or you can encourage other ways of doing. As far as there was something else that came to my mind with AI. Yeah, AI. You can't. At least you can. And it's the same true of SaaS in general. You can probably choose a provider where they will be running the inference and everything in an area geographically where the carbon intensity is lower. So if you have, say, a French AI provider doing a very similar sort of service as other providers based in the US, good for the French one, not because I'm French, and I would encourage that, but because the carbon intensity in France is lower because it's not as much fossil fuel. I think I'm afraid that there's no simple answer to SaaS, really. I think we had another question from Theo.
There was another one
right,
from
Mike?
Theo. If you're able to read that and give us your answer, that'd be great.
And I've lost it. Every time I speak, I can't hear anyone after that. Sorry. So I'll just read the question from Theo. So, cost by switching over from US to Sweden in the case study. Excellent question. Thank you, Theo. Yes, I think there was for some of the resources that they were planning to that they are planning to move to Sweden. I think there would be a slight increase in changing to Sweden. But because at the same time they'll move to more recent instance types, it nullifies the difference. And anyway, camera forensics are happy to pay a little bit more if it means that they can reduce their emissions by 20 times. But
I think
there can be a slight financial impact.
Julien can't
I can hear Gareth, but
no, you can't. I think camera forensics, if it was a like for like, it was like a 4% increase. And it varies, like AWS and Azure, they do price the same services differently in different regions and everything else. So it is something to be aware of. There's obviously then the cost of actually doing the move as well, which is more down to kind of organizational people costs and how you manage a change. You can't hear me, can you, Julien? No, you can't.
It doesn't seem like it, no. But we could, so.
Okay, I think that was final questions. I know Julien can't hear me, but just want to say thanks so much again to everyone for coming, and to Julien for that amazing presentation. And do keep your eye on, you can't hear us, do keep your eye on Spruce, and do get in touch with Julien if you would like to hear more, or if you have any other questions. I know he's very keen to hear from you. Just want to say thank you so much again. We will wrap it up here. And we'll get the recording onto our website, so if anyone came late or if you missed it, we'll also get a copy of Julien's slides as well, which some of them were quite hard to see, so I think they're quite small. So we'll get everything up on the site in the next couple of days. Once again, thank you, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.